Okay, welcome everyone. We are really excited to have you here for our Programs Abroad pre-departure orientation for next term. And we're really excited for you. In the next few short weeks, you're going to be stepping into new cultures, new academic environments, new experiences that will shape your personal and educational journey in many lasting ways. Today's session is designed to prepare you for that adventure. I want to start by introducing our team who is here today presenting. So just give me a second here. Okay. All right, so our director, Kate Scott, is not able to join us today, but you can see here on the screen. My name is Kirsten Shepard. I'm the Assistant Director of Programs Abroad. With me today, we have Jess Simmons, who is our Senior Program Coordinator. We also have three Program Abroad coordinators, Ashley, Sarah, and Sam, who will each be talking to you for certain components of today. And you'll see his picture later, but also we have our Global Risk Office, Sean, with us today. And so during this presentation, we are going to walk through what to expect, how to stay safe, how to navigate cultural differences, and how to make the most of your time abroad, both inside and outside of the classroom. Study abroad is an opportunity for you to challenge yourself, to broaden your perspective and grow in ways you haven't yet imagined. So our goal today is to equip you with the knowledge, the resources, and confidence to make sure that you have a great experience. And so again, thank you for being here and congratulations on taking this exciting step towards a global education. We're going to get started with a short video.
Greetings, Vols Abroad. I'm John Zomtry, Provost and Senior Vice Chancellor.
And I'm Gretchen Neisler, Vice Provost for International Affairs.
We want to take this opportunity to congratulate you on your decision to elevate your volunteer experience through study abroad. Your dedication to global education and cultural exchange truly exemplifies the volunteer spirit. By stepping beyond your comfort zone, you will gain a diverse perspective and contribute to our increasingly interconnected world. Your decision to study abroad reflects a commitment to personal growth and academic excellence. You will learn more about yourself, the world around you, grow in your knowledge, skills, and sense of purpose, and discover the beauty of new places, cultures, and people.
In a world of increasing global connectedness, there's a need for strong communication and interpersonal skills, adaptability, and leadership skills. By going abroad, you are moving beyond the classroom to develop the education competencies and real-world experiences that employers seek.
And you will also have a chance to make a difference both abroad and back home. You will have a chance to share what it means to be a volunteer and further develop your own commitment to service and leadership. The volunteer spirit can profoundly impact the world, and the torch you carry will indeed light the way for others along your journey.
And remember, you're not alone. The Programs Abroad Office within the Center for Global Engagement is here to support you at every stage of your Vols Abroad experience, allowing you to confidently explore opportunities outside of your comfort zone.
So, Vols Abroad, we wish you safe travels and
Go Vols!
And further develop your own.
Sorry about that. All right, so as we get started, I want to take a moment and talk about what it means to step into this experience as a UT student abroad. So first, our role at the University of Tennessee is to make sure you have the information, preparation, and resources you need to make good decisions while you're away. As the video suggested, we're here to support you, to answer questions, and help you navigate anything that comes up on your time abroad. Your role, though, is just as important. So you are responsible for learning about the cultural norms and expectations in your host community and staying aware of any issues or updates related to your destination. This is going to help you stay safe, respectful, and well prepared. While you are abroad, you represent both the University of Tennessee and the United States. So how you carry yourself abroad really matters, not just for you, but also for the students who will come after you and for the partnerships that we've built with universities and communities around the world. With that in mind, I want to be upfront about some of the expectations that come with participating in a UT Abroad program. If those expectations are violated, there can be serious consequences. These consequences can include being reported to appropriate UT authorities, facing conduct sanctions, being dismissed from the program early, or dealing with legal consequences in your host country. So the guidelines that we're using for this are really ones that you should already be familiar with. You are held to the UT Student Code of Conduct and also the behavioral agreements that you have signed in your Vols Abroad portal. So these aren't just forms, they outline the standards we expect you to uphold so that you, your group, and our partners have a safe and successful experience. So if you need to go back and look at those, you can find them in the Vols Abroad portal. Beyond that, we also want to talk about how culture plays into this. Before you arrive, it's helpful to remember that every country has its own rhythms, norms, and daily habits. Sometimes they're very different from what you're used to. Things like homestays, traditions, communication styles, or even how air conditioning and laundry work can feel unfamiliar at first. Those differences are a normal part of adjusting. And they're also what makes studying abroad fun and a really powerful learning experience. And so there are a few things that set students up for success. The first one I have here is be prepared. Take some time to study the culture you're going to before you go, whether that's through articles, TikTok, or conversations with someone who's been there. Second, be open. Approach your host culture with respect and curiosity. Lead with empathy. Your host country, your host community isn't adjusting to you. You're learning how they live. And so be curious. Look for what's new to you. What sticks out as strange or different or something that makes you stop and say, wow, you wouldn't see that where I come from. When you see or experience these things and you're hearing that inner voice in your head that's like, what's going on here? Or it might even just be, that's interesting. This is the gold you're looking for. This is the time when you should ask questions and find out why people do the things they do and why they act the way they act. My final one is be engaged and have fun. Keep communication open, ask lots of questions, try new experiences, and make sure you bring a growth mindset. You are going to make mistakes, and that is part of learning. So the more open you can be, the more you're able to immerse yourself and participate fully, the better your experience is going to be and the more fun you're going to have. Okay, I'm turning things over to my colleague for Academics Abroad.
Hi, I'm Sarah Jobe. I'm going to walk you through just a few items related to academics while you're abroad. So there's a couple of different kinds of programs that students can go on. I'm going to focus right now on the transfer credit programs. So that includes affiliate programs, exchange programs, direct enroll, or affiliate internship programs. So if that's the type of program that you're going on, a good question to ask yourself is, are those courses that I take while I'm abroad on those types of programs, will those grades in those courses affect my GPA? And so the answer is they can or they will affect your Hope Scholarship GPA, but they do not affect your UT cumulative GPA. And then for those courses, you've probably heard this term already, but you do need to complete the request for transfer credit form. And we do have some more detailed information coming on that in the bonus section at the end of the presentation. So if you need more information on that and you've got some questions, we're going to walk through that process a little bit more. And so just stay on and get more information. And then if you are participating in a UTK credit program, and that includes faculty-directed programs or UTK academic internships, then the courses that you take while you're abroad, those grades do affect both your UT cumulative GPA and the Hope Scholarship GPA, and you do not need to complete the request for transferred credit form. All right, a few additional items on those, on what we were just walking through. So for the transfer credit forms, you want to complete that request for transfer credit form that's found in your Vols Abroad portal. You can regularly monitor the progress of that form when you go to tiny.utk.edu. And then for UTK credit courses, you need to enroll in the appropriate courses on My UTK as instructed by your faculty leader and academic advisor. If you do have questions about which course to enroll in, reach out directly to the faculty and they can direct you on which course to enroll. And now I'll turn it over to Sam.
Hey guys, I am Sam Benavides, one of the program coordinators at the Programs Abroad office. While finances aren't the flashiest topic, it is important to review before you embark on your program. All financial aid and scholarship questions should be directed to One Stop, but generally you can use these awards towards your study abroad program, keeping in mind that you must be enrolled as a full-time student and enrolled in a course that is applicable towards your degree. You'll note the considerations on the screen. For those of you seeking transfer credit, make sure your program is recognized by the University of Tennessee. You can do so by searching for it in the Vols Abroad site. Additionally, you should be registered with the Programs Abroad office and have submitted the request for transfer credit form. For those of you receiving UTK credit, it's important to ensure that you're enrolled through your My UTK and that the course you're enrolled in is also making progress towards your degree. To assess your unique financial plan, please contact One Stop. Let's take a moment to scan the QR code on the screen. Here you will find important dates from One Stop. One Stop will continue to upload this calendar, so please keep an eye out. You can expect that your program fees will be posted to your account according to the standard UTK calendar. Any excess financial aid or refunds that you are planning on receiving will generally be made available to you 2 to 3 weeks after the start of the UTK term. I'll give you just another moment to scan this QR code here on the left. Okay. As for managing your finances abroad, we have a few helpful tips. First, using a currency converter gives you a realistic idea of the exchange rate and helps you plan and build your budget. Secondly, start planning now how you will access your finances while abroad. We strongly recommend you to bring at least 2 forms of payment as a security measure. Keep in mind that MasterCard and Visa are widely accepted, whereas American Express and Discover cards are more limited. Some other things to keep in mind are, will you be charged foreign transaction fees? Are there withdrawal fees? Do you need to take your passport to withdraw money? Early planning helps set you up for success. Lastly, research the cost of living in your host country. This is going to help you create a budget and stick to it. Up next, we have Ashley with passports.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Ashley Sarek, and I am another Programs Abroad coordinator here in the office. And I'm going to talk to you all about passports. So passports are essential when traveling abroad. So here are some helpful information and tips when it comes to navigating and using your passport. So please make sure that your passport is signed and that all the information is correct before you upload it to the Vols Abroad portal. And this may not pertain to all of you, but if you have a visa, this is also important to know. Please make sure that your name on your passport 100% matches with the information listed on your visa. Be sure to lock your passport in your luggage or in another secure spot when not in use. and check your passport validity requirement of your destination. To do so, you can find this information on travel.state.gov, and the average requirement that your passport is valid is at least 6 months past your program return date. And now, some do nots when handling passports. So make sure that there are no marks in your passports that are not made by a government official. Any unofficial marks will invalidate your passport. So when you sign your passport, make sure it's only in blue or black ink. Do not carry your passport around town with you, but you can have a picture of your passport on your phone. And do not leave your passport behind if you will be traveling during free time. So if you're going to a hotel check-in, customs, all those sort of things. And then one last final reminder, please make sure that your passport is uploaded in your Vols Abroad portal before you depart on your program. And if you need to make a passport appointment, we have a UTK Passport Services in the Student Union, or you can email them at getpassport@utk.edu. And now I'll pass it over to Sean Lanker, who will be talking about health and safety.
Great, thank you so much. Let me see, make sure I can move this here. All right. So as Ashley just mentioned, my name is Sean Lanker. I'm Assistant Director for Global Security, Risk, and Resilience in the Center for Global Engagement. So I work really closely with Programs Abroad and other individuals going abroad for UTK purposes to handle risk and emergency management issues. So today we're going to be talking, you're going to have me here for quite a bit of time because we're going to be talking about some important resources and some planning you should be doing at this point before you study abroad. So let's dive in. So basically, first of all, we're going to talk about Crisis 24 and Chubb. I'll tell you the difference between those two things and what those resources are and how you can activate them. We'll talk a little bit about how we handle incidents and global security risks and things that you should be aware of and watch out for while you're abroad. And additionally, we'll talk about the emergency action plan. So basically resources that are available to you while you're abroad that you should not hesitate to take advantage of if needed. We'll talk about alcohol and drug use, and then we'll talk about physical and mental health while you're abroad. So to start off, let's talk about Crisis 24. So Crisis 24 is UT's 24/7 medical and security emergency assistance provider. So this is a really great resource that you should all be aware of and take advantage of if needed, both before you travel, but also if you need assistance while you're abroad. So it does provide that 24/7 medical and security assistance, and that includes issues related to like mental health concerns, for example. So to use an example, say you needed help finding a medical center or English-speaking doctor in your host country, you can call Crisis 24, and not only can they help you find a reputable source for that coverage or for that care, but also they can link you usually through our medical insurance provider, which is Chubb, which I'll talk about next. So we do readily recommend that you reach out to Crisis 24, especially if you need medical care while you're abroad, just because they can usually work with most providers to pay on the back end, which means you're not going to be paying out of pocket for your care. I will note that this can also be used as that pre-trip resource, as I mentioned. So I would recommend, I don't know if probably can't click this here in the presentation, but I'll be talking about some resources, including a QR code where you can access that quite easily. So I would recommend visiting that website before you travel. You've already heard from us, and you'll hear throughout today recommendations that you do some research about your destination before you travel, and that includes for things like risks, right? Medical and security risks and things that you need to be aware of. So you can use Crisis 24 as a pre-trip resource, and it has country briefing profiles for every location around the world. So it can be very helpful, and I do recommend that you check in on that. Additionally, again, there was a QR code on a future slide, but you can download the mobile app. So actually, I think that's on the next slide here. Go ahead, and I would recommend doing that now. It's a really great resource. If you log in, please do note that you need to use your @tennessee.edu email address. versus at utk.edu email address. That's just because our coverage is across the UT system and not just for UTK. So please do note that you will need to use your at tennessee.edu email to do that initial registration and login in future sessions. I do recommend that you download the app now. Take this moment to go ahead and scan those QR codes and download it. Because really what you want is to have all of that done before you need the assistance, right? So if you download the app now, if you take the time to log in using that at tennessee.edu email, then if you need assistance, you're not going to be scrambling of what's that number. The app is really great too, because if you allow it to do so, it will do push notifications for the areas that you are in, which I recommend you do. And it also has just a one-hit button where you can say, I need assistance, and it will connect you to the assistance center. So a really great resource, not enough students take advantage of. So please don't be that student. Please take advantage of that resource. I will note that Crisis 24 is not health insurance. Chubb is our international health insurance. So don't expect you to remember the word Chubb. Just know that there are kind of two different part of your assistance package here. You have Crisis 24 that are actually doing a kind of assistance services, and that is backed up in the background by Chubb, which is our international health insurance. So that this Chubb insurance that you'll be enrolled in while you're abroad does include coverage for emergency care situations and medical prescriptions, emergency medical security evacuation benefits if that was needed. Hopefully not, knock on wood, right? But it is something that you are enrolled in and that you have the power to take advantage of while you're abroad. I will note here that Crisis 24 and Chubb, while very beneficial to you, they are not travel insurance. So they don't cover things like missed or delayed flights or lost luggage or stolen items. If you want this, especially say you want insurance for like your laptop or smartphone or something like that, you're worried that it might get lost or stolen or something of that nature, that is going to be something you need to purchase separately. It is not part of our insurance. I talk about this at every pre-departure orientation session, and after every pre-departure orientation session, a student has an issue with let's say phone, and they ask if it can be covered by our insurance, and the answer is always going to be no, especially electronic devices. It does not cover. So if that's something you're interested in, please look into it now. I will say, like I said earlier, it's really beneficial that you call Crisis 24 just because they can usually work with the medical provider to set up that back end payment so that you're not paying anything out of pocket. That might not work in every circumstance, or the provider on the ground might not accept that type of direct payment from Crisis 24, in which cases you would need to pay for your medical care out of pocket and then submit those receipts for reimbursement after the fact. So we do have a page on our website, which I'll link to in a future slide, that you can learn more about that if you do need to reach out for reimbursement. Please note that the policy brochure will be sent out to you before your program if it hasn't already been sent to you. I would recommend that you actually review that when you get it. I know we're sending you a lot of information, including during today's session, but it is an important part of your health and safety plan while you're abroad. So I'd recommend you read through that Chubb brochure, make sure you're familiar with it, and then making sure you're also aware of some of the key policy exceptions. That includes things like routine dental care, physicals, things like that. It really is meant to be kind of sickness or accident insurance, not just regular insurance that you would use for regular routine checkups or physicals or care of that nature. So it's an accident insurance policy. Of course, you can always reach out to me. I think we had my email at the beginning. I will make sure I put it in the chat afterwards. I think it's also on a future slide. This is that QR code. I know we're throwing a lot of QR codes at you today, but they are important information. If you want to take a look at some of that before it's sent to you, you can scan this page. It will take you to our website that has both that Crisis 24 information and access point, but also insurance coverage and policy and the benefits brochure. That's what I recommend that you take a look at and print out and take with you while you're abroad. It's great airplane reading, so I'd recommend you do that. And that's also where you can find the steps to file reimbursement if needed. There's a claims form, etc. We're always here to help in those situations too. So if you need to while you're abroad and you need to seek a reimbursement, just reach out to us and we can help you navigate that situation. I'm going to pivot a little bit and talk about what kind of common incidents that we actually see abroad. I would say the most common incidents that we see are those lost and stolen items, which is why you hear me really diving into that. Hey, if you want insurance for your phone or laptop, that you should go ahead and look at independent options now, personal options that you might purchase and use while you're abroad. Because that unfortunately is probably, one of the most common incidents that we do see. That's usually taking the form of like more passive pickpocketing, or a common situation we see is a student that might leave their bag like behind them. There's various types of shelving on subways or buses, and so they're not paying attention to the bag, and the bag is just easily taken when the student is just on their phone, or maybe falling asleep or something like that. So please do make sure you watch out for those types of items. Of course, we do see a lot of alcohol related incidents. In fact, I would say probably somewhere between like 85 and 90%. If we ask the question, was alcohol a contributing factor to this incident? The answer is yes. I'm going to talk a lot more about alcohol in a future slide, but it is something to be aware of while you're abroad. And then we see things like interpersonal conflicts, students having issues with group dynamics or roommate issues, things of that nature. So most common incidents we're seeing are at the lower end of the spectrum, which is good. But of course, there are things that you can do to help even prevent those things from happening. So that's what we're talking about right now. Other things that we see, we do see from time to time things like a lost passport. So again, if you find yourself in that situation, a lost or stolen passport, please do reach out to your program leader. That's something that we can help you navigate in those situations. Sometimes it can be challenging if you're, traveling or something like that. So please do reach out, because we can figure out the best way to connect you basically with the U.S. embassy or consulate in the host country to get that an emergency replacement passport in those situations. And then I would recommend, where I'm going to give you a lot of phone numbers, but saving those into your phone and an online platform. So, it's always helpful to have it on your phone if needed for quick access in an emergency situation. But I think it's also a great idea to have something like a Google Doc or something that you can upload these various resources that we're sharing with you, like the insurance brochure, Crisis 24 information, etc., so that you can access that if needed. So like I said, most of the incidents that we see abroad are at the lower end of the severity spectrum, but the world being as it is, we do see some higher level concerns as well. And that can include everything from natural disasters, terrorism, street crime, protests, political unrests. But it's worth remembering that we can see some of these things in the United States as well. You can see some of these things in Knoxville as well, right? And so I don't think you are, part of our due diligence, we're setting up programs is making sure that you're going to areas that you have resources and support resources and that are generally safe, although there are precautions that you should be taking to help keep yourself safe, right? So some of those precautions that you can be taking, making sure you're following local news and media outlets. New York Times or Washington Post can be great, but they do have a more U.S. domestic slant. And so, it's worth finding once you're abroad or even before you travel, because it's a great way to start learning more about the country that you'll be traveling to, some more local news or media outlets. I think that's a great question to ask every one of you when you arrive in your program location. You're going to have an in-country orientation session. And so that's a great question to ask at that orientation session. What are some good reputable, good local news and media outlets that I should follow while I'm abroad so I can stay on top of news and alerts and things of that nature? I do very strongly recommend that you sign up for the Crisis 24 email alerts as well. When you create a profile on Crisis 24's website using that at tennessee.edu login information, you can sign up for email alerts on that website. But that's also the benefit of downloading the app, is that it will push out alerts to you. And if you share your location, it's not like we're spying on you or anything like that. It's more like it will tell you alerts that are specifically happening in the areas that you are in at that moment. So I think it's a very powerful tool if you set it up and use it in that way. So I would recommend that. You can sign up for the U.S. State Department alerts and guidance, and we'll talk about that on a future slide, the Smart Travel Enrollment Program, or STEP. like I said earlier, I do recommend researching your study abroad location and local culture before you travel to those areas, just to better understand the cultural issues and norms, including those related to gender, sexual orientation, and ethnic and identity. We're going to talk about that in a future slide too, about your when it comes to your physical and mental health. But what I always recommend is just doing an assessment, right? Of, what am I bringing with me when I'm abroad, both from a, hey, I know I'm dealing with this mental health issue or this physical health issue, but also, hey, I'm bringing, this part of my identity, whether that's sexual orientation or gender or other things, right? And thinking about, okay, so how does that work here in the United States? How might that work in my host country or countries that I'm visiting? So I would take a look at or take that time now before you find yourself in the deep end, start thinking about that. Like that's some homework that you can give yourself before you travel, including things like appropriate dress. What are some communication styles you might encounter while you're in the host country? What are like some conceptions of personal space, for example? This is also a great example of things that you can ask about when you're at your in-country orientation session, right? We don't expect I feel like most of you probably have never been to your host country before, right? And so we don't expect you to be experts in knowing these cultural norms or things to be watching out for, right? And so that's a perfect example of things that you can ask about at your in-country orientation session to help yourself navigate those situations while you're abroad. I do recommend you sign up for that Smart Traveler enrollment program. As I mentioned earlier, STEP, it should take not they've changed the process a little bit. So I think it takes probably about like 5 to 10 minutes. But that does give your information to the U.S. Embassy and consulate in that host country. It really makes it a lot easier for U.S. Embassy personnel to locate you if there's an emergency abroad, but also to receive alerts coming from the U.S. Embassy in those locations. So again, powerful tool. Please do take the time to sign up for it. You need to do that yourself. That's not something we can sign you up for. In general, just keep your cell phone charged. If there is an emergency, say a terrorist attack or a natural disaster, we have protocols where we will be checking in on you to make sure that you're okay, that you don't need assistance, right? And so we will be mostly doing that through your phone or computer, emails, calls. We have an escalating path of how we're going to make sure you're doing okay. And so, especially if you find yourself in a situation abroad that like I said, natural disaster or something like that, know that we will be trying to, or somebody from the program will be trying to check in on you, and to please monitor your phone or email so that we can just make sure you're safe. I do recommend taking a power bank and note the USB port type that you are is required in your host country. And also, it's worth looking at, what power banks are okay to take on flights as well, or if that's something better to purchase in your host country. All right, sorry. Let's go. Some additional best practice to help keep yourself safe. And again, these are things I would say you should practice while in Knoxville, right? This is stuff that you should be doing in the United States. So it's nothing, out of the norm, but these are great things to do while you're abroad to help keep yourself safe. So stay aware of your surroundings, maintaining a low profile and trying to fit in, following that local guidance. Again, that's a great opportunity to ask about at your in-country orientation session. That can be a question about like, hey, what are some unsafe areas that I should be aware of in this host city, right? Or what are some areas I need to be aware of at night? We all know that some areas might be totally fine during the day, but they change character at night. And so, again, you probably are not familiar with that city, but your program contacts and program leaders are. And so that's a great question to ask in terms of navigating your host city and country. Refrain from wearing flashy clothes and jewelry. Really, basically, a lot of this guidance is about like when you are wearing flashy clothes or jewelry, or waving around a $2,000 iPhone, you're just making yourself more of a target for things like pickpocketing or robbery and things of that nature. And so, trying to keep a low profile and fit in our general best practices, right? Watch your valuables, as I said, especially when you're on like public transportation, whether that's on a bus or on a train. I recommend always, instead of storing your backpack over your head, maybe just keeping it between your legs or something that where you can keep an eye on it, right? And that will help you avoid things like pickpocketing or someone stealing your bag or your phone or your laptop. I think it's also very common, especially on college campuses, to feel okay leaving like your laptop on your desk when you are in the library, for example, when you're running to the restroom. I wouldn't do that when you're abroad, like at a cafe or something like that, right? It's just making it more likely that it's going to be picked up by somebody who says, "Oh, free laptop," right? So I think that's something else, another precaution that you can and should take. And then generally, I always say you should listen to your gut. I think your gut can be wrong sometimes, but it also can be right in a lot of circumstances. And it's not necessarily saying you always have to listen to your gut, but you should listen to that ping that's saying, I need to pay attention. Something seems off here. And that devoting more attention to it can help you take more appropriate actions in those circumstances. So I do recommend listen to your gut. I do want to note too, right? We're in a challenging travel environment in a lot of ways. That we are constantly monitoring world events that may impact travel, including those that take place in the United States. We do have a page set up that has some general travel guidance around some world events that we have seen. I think in particular, if you're an international student, aka a non-U.S. citizen who's traveling abroad, this is can be an anxiety-provoking time, right, to travel abroad and questions about, hey, can I get back to the United States and things of that nature. Please know that one of our sister offices over in CGE, the International Student and Scholar Services, or ISSS, do monitor things that are coming from abroad and from the U.S. federal government that might impact immigration statuses or challenges to immigration here in the United States. So please take a look at those web pages. And this traveling inside or outside the US. If you go to that one URL, again, I know you guys cannot click this, but that does kind of serve as an air traffic control page. It will link you to these various pages. I also understand that a lot of you might have very specific questions or specific circumstances, and I'm always happy to help. If I can't answer questions myself, at least connect you to others at the university who might be able to answer your questions. So please do feel free to reach out to me at SLENKER@utk.edu. And I will do my best to provide assistance. I told you this was coming, and here it is. So alcohol consumption, like I said, most incidents that we're dealing with, up to maybe 90% of them have an underlying factor of overconsumption of alcohol. It's a very common factor in our incidents and vastly increases the chances of putting yourself or others in situations where you might become seriously injured or even killed. If drinking, please consume alcohol in moderation. I know for a lot of you, you might not be 21 in the United States, and so you've never experienced a culture where you can drink and it's legal to do so, and that can lead to a temptation to overindulge. And I'm just saying that can put yourself in a situation where, remember, you don't know the culture that well or at all. You might not know, how to navigate the actual city itself about getting back home, or how to use what type of public transportation to avoid, or which to take, types of taxis to avoid, which to take. So you can put yourself in situations when you're over consuming where you're heightening the risk of an incident happening to you, right? So please do not consume alcohol in excess. Please do consider those risk factors of being in an unfamiliar place under the influence. Please do think about that drinking culture in the host country. You've probably all heard the caricature of the U.S. American of Americans abroad that are seen as like boorish or overconfident, right? And that's partially because of overconsumption of alcohol. People drink and act like a fool, and that makes us all look bad. So just remember that you are also that representative of UT. Please do remember that that if you do impact the host community or others on the program or yourself, that can have repercussions back here, especially if you're causing a safety issue for other students, or if it's leading you to have issues with the program, missing class or missing activities because you are hungover. That's never going to be an excuse for missing class or activities. So please do make sure you're not doing it. Please be sure to use the buddy system and don't leave anyone behind. I think some programs might even institute a system where it's not just buddies, but maybe pairs, groups of 3 that are traveling. Make sure if you are using that buddy system, which you should be using, don't leave your buddy behind. Drug use, I would just say just don't do it, right? Drug laws in much of the world can be even stricter than those in the United States with zero tolerance. There's a full show called Locked Up Abroad. Don't become a subject matter for Locked Up Abroad, right? That is, there's very little we can do to help you. There's very little that the U.S. Embassy can do to help you. You do not, just because you have a U.S. passport, mean that you are not subject to host country laws. And so do take that very seriously about their laws, including drug laws, right? And so I would just say, don't do it. Avoid it. Don't put yourself in that situation. Like I said, you are still going to be held to those standards that are, on-campus standards and U.S. laws and policies as well. So please make sure you're paying attention to that factor when you're considering putting yourself in these more risky situations, right? You are responsible for your own behavior and any misconduct or legal implications. And remember, there's little that we can do if you were, say, arrested, right? And there's very little the U.S. Embassy can do in those situations. So again, the best thing you can do is just avoid illegal drugs. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Kirsten, who's going to talk through a case study with you all.
Okay, everyone, let's walk through this case together. So we'll take a minute to read the situation on the right side of this slide together. This scenario follows Sophia, a UT student who's studying abroad in Costa Rica. And so I will just read with you. During a break from classes, Sophia, an American sophomore studying abroad in Costa Rica, sits down for lunch with a group that included a few American students she met in class. Her classmates have invited 2 locals to show them around for good places to eat. At the restaurant, the locals buy a bottle of guaro, a local liqueur common to enjoy with meals. It's a Costa Rican tradition, one of them says. This is new to Sophia, but she accepts the glass. The group has a great time, but then the locals order another bottle. Sophia glances around, unsure if she should accept the second glass. Don't worry, it's perfectly normal here, the local reassures her. Okay, so let's start our discussion and ground ourselves with 2 simple questions. Who is involved and where are they from? Right? So we have 2 different groups here. We have Sophia from the United States and some other American students. And then we also have some local students from Costa Rica. So we're dealing with 2 different cultures here. I want you to take a minute and think about the social dynamics, what's familiar, what feels unfamiliar. And I want you to try and put yourself in Sophia's shoes. I'm going to put up a poll here. Let me just turn on the poll. Hold on one second. Here we go. Launching the poll. How comfortable would you be in this situation if you were Sophia? So scale of 1 to 5. 1 is not uncomfortable at all. 5 is very uncomfortable. Go ahead and enter your response in the poll. I'll give you a few minutes. I can see the tally going up. Half of you have responded. I'll share the poll at the end. There's no right or wrong answer here. We're just trying to get a sense of how different people interpret the same situation based on background, experience, or personal thresholds. Okay, we're getting close to our numbers, our total numbers. So I'm going to give you a few more seconds and then I'm going to end the poll. My goal is to get 100% of you to answer. So let me win this. Let me win this poll. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm ending the poll now and sharing the results so that you can see them here. And so you can see there's a range across the spectrum in terms of how each individual, over 500 students who completed this poll, fall on that range from not uncomfortable at all to very uncomfortable, with the bulk of people somewhere in the middle, right? And so it just goes to show that based on your past experience, your own personal boundaries, you're going to experience the same situation overseas in very different ways. Okay, so the other question I want you to think about is what in this situation, which of these two or three scenarios do you agree with? Is this situation due primarily to cultural difference? Is it a safety concern? Or is it a little bit of both? And so I'm curious to hear from you. I'm giving you one more poll. So I'm going to ask you to do this one more time. I want you to tell me if this is a cultural problem, a safety problem, or maybe a little bit of both a cultural difference and a safety concern. So what's your thought? Okay, we're getting up there in terms of number of students. I'm going to give it just a few more seconds. Give you a chance to answer. Okay, that's about as many people as did it last time. So here's where the results fall on this poll. Some, about 12%, think that the primary issue here is cultural difference. Some, about 18%, think that this is primarily a safety concern. But the majority of you on this webinar today think that it's both a cultural difference and a safety concern. And so the good news is all of you are right, right? It is potentially a cultural difference that is at play here. It is potentially a safety concern. And really, it could be both. And so, as you prepare to step into your host community, one of the most important things to understand is that culture and safety are closely connected. Every location that you will visit has its own norms. That might be around food, daily schedules, communication, even alcohol use. So, what feels new or different to you might be completely ordinary where you are going. And that means a couple things for you as a traveler. First, staying curious and informed about local customs will help you engage respectfully and build positive connections. Second, those same cultural differences can introduce situations where your comfort level, your personal boundaries, or your safety expectations don't automatically match what's going on around you. So, for example, in many regions, socializing over meals can include alcohol, even at lunchtime. And drinking may be woven into hospitality or bonding. That doesn't mean you have to participate beyond what feels safe for you. Your tolerance, your judgment, your ability to read a new environment are all factors that you should be considering. So, as Sean said, using his example around alcohol, many study abroad incidents involve alcohol as a contributing factor. And so I like to use the language of alcohol plus. So alcohol plus refers to situations where alcohol combines with another risk, making the situation more dangerous than either factor alone. So some examples might be alcohol plus being out alone at night, alcohol plus being in or near a vehicle, alcohol plus being in an unfamiliar part of town, alcohol plus a crowded or rowdy event like festivals or nightlife or celebrations. And so in this case, where it's two different components that change the risk level, you can lower your risk significantly by subtracting alcohol from high risk situations. Drinking norms differ a lot across countries, so you want to follow local cues and rely on your best judgment, not your impaired judgment. New environments are very exciting, but safety should always be at the storefront. So the key is balancing openness with self-awareness, knowing when to say yes and no, when to trust your instincts, make sure you're staying connected with your peers. You want to make sure that culture will enrich your experiences, not compromise your well-being. So we really just want you to immerse yourself, to learn, to enjoy your surroundings. And at the same time, we expect you to make choices that support your safety, your academic goals, and the community you represent. That's just part of being a responsible traveler and a representative of UT. Okay. So I have just a few examples here of how culture, safety, play into this scenario. Also some safety measures that you can take, to keep yourself a little bit safer. Okay, turning it back to Sean.
Thanks, Kirsten. That was very helpful. So please do some reflection on that, right? I think Kirsten's way of framing it with the alcohol plus, right, is a very great way to think about it, especially when you're abroad. So please do take that seriously. I do want to pivot a little bit and talk about physical and mental health, which obviously can be impacted by drugs and alcohol. But this is where I'm going to go back to what I said earlier about doing that assessment of yourself. Many of you are maybe, I don't know, 6 weeks out, 4 weeks out before the start of your program in early January. And so this is the perfect time to start thinking through, what am I bringing with me to this program, right? Doing that internal audit, as I like to call it. And that includes things like your physical and mental health. I think as part of all of your application processes, we ask you to put together a self-disclosure of any medical issues that you might be dealing with. So you can use that as a tool, but also you can just kind of think through, again, what am I dealing with here while I'm in Knoxville or while I'm, in this last semester? That can be things like anxiety, and that can be things like, a bum knee, right? It could be physical health, it can be mental health. But do that assessment now while you have time, because right now you have time to also develop a plan. So how will you handle that physical or mental health challenge? And you should really be thinking about that now, because if it's needed, to set up a plan for, like, talking to a therapist or counselor, say that you're struggling with anxiety or depression or some other mental health issue, right? Now is the time that you can have conversations with your existing therapist or counselor if you're using one, or go to the clinic here, CAPS here, Counseling and Psychological Services here on campus, right? Before you travel, while you're still here in Knoxville for this semester, to say, hey, I'm a little bit worried about how I'm going to handle X, Y, or Z while I'm abroad. And they can help you think through that and develop a plan, right? And that includes that physical health too, right? You have one of the benefits of being on the college campus is that you can go to the student health center and talk about medical conditions that you're dealing with, and you can work with them or your existing doctor or your existing therapist, your existing counselor, to develop a plan about how you are going to address that issue or concern while you are abroad. And this is the time to do it. This is the time to do that internal audit and think about how am I going to handle that situation. I will say, please make sure I would recommend looking at your mental health and physical health disclosure form, the self-disclosure form that you put in your Balls Abroad portal, and please make sure you are, if needed, update that. Things may have changed when you filled it out earlier this semester. We want to make sure we are aware of things so that we can support you in those situations, right? And feel free to reach out. I know sometimes, right, it's one thing to fill out a form versus to talk to another human being about an issue or a concern you have. So again, you have my email. You can always reach out to me, and we can and work through a specific question or concern you have before you travel. That includes things while you're abroad, right? So say you are dealing with mental health or things like culture shock or homesickness, I really recommend to reach out to your program leader or reach out to PAO, so that we can help you figure out that situation and get the care and resources that you need in that situation. Our goal is always to keep things at a manageable level, right? We don't want them to grow into crisis or emergency situations. We want to address issues while they're still small and manageable. So please do reach out if we can be helpful, and we will help connect you to resources while you're abroad. You are not alone. Like I said, we do, if something does grow, obviously things, like I said, accidents and sicknesses can happen to any of us at any time, really, right? So we do have these resources in place that can help you in those emergency situations, including Crisis 24. One of the great benefits of Crisis 24 that we set up when we started that relationship with them is that they come with 6 free tele mental health counseling sessions for every single one of you, right? Every UT traveler has access to those 6 free telehealth sessions. And so please do know that that's a resource, and reach out if you need, again, assistance or help navigating that, because that's why one of the reasons we're here is to help you in those situations. And again, to keep things manageable. If there is a situation that requires a higher level of response, we're here. We have experience and resources, and we are, again, you are not alone in those situations. So please do reach out. I think just generally speaking, I think part of doing your initial assessment is, again, thinking about, hey, I know I'm dealing with anxiety, or hey, I know I'm dealing with depression. Well, you can think about, what do you do currently in the United States, in Knoxville, to help with that situation? And here we have a list of possible things that could be helpful, but you should really think about your own specific circumstances and what works for you, right? So some people respond to things like meditation, and some people cannot stand it, right? It makes them more stressed because they feel like they don't get it. So think about what works for you in those situations, and again, think about what you use now, because some of those resources, say, what really helps you is that I connect with my friends over dinner every night, and are able to talk about my day. Sure, you might meet some new people, but you might not have that same access or ease of access to your friend group as you would on campus, right? So it's not going to maybe be a direct equivalent. And that's why you start thinking about it now, to say, okay, I don't have access to that one coping mechanism, right, while I'm abroad. So what am I going to do instead? And this is the time to plan for that. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but these are some suggested, ways that other students have found helpful to support their own mental health, and ultimately think about what works best for you, though. In general, medications and immunizations, again, this is something that you should be thinking about now. This is the perfect time to be thinking about it. If you are taking medication or have a prescription for a mental or physical health issue, one of the things that you might rightfully ask yourself, well, how do I bring this medication into my host country? Is it legal to bring this medication into the host country? Are there restrictions on how much I can take, or can I get a prescription refilled while I'm abroad? And this is the time to ask those questions, right? One of the great benefits, again, about Crisis 24 is that it is a pre-travel resource. If you have questions or concerns about restrictions or legality of medication, this is the time to reach out. You can reach out again to me or to PAO or directly to Crisis 24, and we can help you answer those questions related to legality or restrictions or the ease of replacing a medication while you're abroad. In general, it's always recommended that you do carry a detailed description of your medication from a doctor, aka what is its what its purpose. Generally speaking, if possible, it's best to carry something like that on a doctor's letterhead that's signed, something that you can carry in case, especially if you know you're bringing some more restricted type of medication, right? To the Border Patrol, right? They might have some questions. You can present that with them, and that usually helps ease your path into the country with controlled medication, right? Make sure you are bringing that adequate supply. You don't want to be finding yourself, like the day before you travel and saying, I don't have enough medication for my 2-week program. What am I going to do, right? Now's the time to think about that. And again, make sure that you can bring that amount into the country. We do recommend you bring a few additional days if possible, right? Things happen. I remember now it's a decade plus, but there was a volcano that erupted in Iceland and basically froze travel throughout the whole continent of Europe, right? And so things like that can happen that we cannot always anticipate. And so that's why it's good to be prepared and have an extra supply if needed, right? For those types of situations. If you do need, again, if it's, I know things happen, whether you forgot, you need to obtain more medication, you lost your medication, it was stolen, etc. Lots of different scenarios, right? Crisis 24, again, if it's available and legal, this is why you should do your homework now. We can work with them to get you replacement medication while in country. That may involve having to go to another doctor in that country to get a prescription in that country. It really depends on the country and what their requirements are for that type of medication. So we are here to help you in those situations. But again, doing a lot of homework now should hopefully prevent you from being put in that situation in the first place. I would recommend, in addition to, carrying a copy of that for customs or for border patrol, you make copies of your prescription and again save it online to something like Google Docs or email it to yourself so that you can access that if needed. Say again, you lost your medication. Well, what's going to be really helpful is to have a copy of your prescription so that you can show that to, a doctor and get that replacement medication. Similar to how we say upload a copy of your passport, right? Because if you lost your passport, it's going to be a lot easier to replace your passport if we have an existing copy of that passport page. For packing, for prescriptions, make sure you are keeping it in the original bottles and packaging only. That usually, here in the United States is usually the orange bottle with the prescription printed on the label. You want that label prescription so that, again, if you have questions at the border, you can show that with them. That's not just some random pills that you're carrying in a pill carrier, right? You want to be able to document, hey, this is what these are, and this is why they're, I have a prescription for them, basically. And then please make sure you're packing those on your carry-on bag and not your checked luggage. This is all hard-earned experience. We've had students that have put the medication in the checked luggage. What happens with checked luggage? Often, unfortunately, it can get lost by the airline. And so again, you don't want to be starting your first few days in the country, your host country, trying to figure out, how do I get this replacement medication, right? Put it in your carry-on bag so that you are just, eliminating that risk, basically. Again, in terms of vaccinations, the U.S. Department of State's website, it can be really a helpful resource to make sure you understand any recommended or required vaccinations for your specific country, your host country. I will talk a little bit here at the end about emergencies abroad. Like I said, I know this is a lot of information. I know, as Katie already shared, there's some resources that I'm going to point you to that has a lot of this information. That's what I would recommend you download, send yourself a copy, create a Google Doc folder of resources so that you can easily access them and refer to them again if needed, because I do understand this is a lot of information at once. Generally speaking, though, if there is an emergency abroad, what do we mean by emergency, by non-emergency? An emergency is really like a life-threatening situation or illness, violent crime, assault, local world events that could threaten safety, like a natural disaster or terrorism, things of that nature. Non-emergencies, lost or stolen items, delayed or missed flights, other transportation disruptions, things like a common cold or allergies. Those are not important when we can help you navigate those situations, but you do not maybe need to call us at 3 a.m. about that, right? So again, you can raise those, especially to your contact leaders or to your on-site leaders or your program provider who's providing health and safety support on the ground. But you can always reach out to us. Again, I just would not call the 24/7 emergency line, which I'm about to go over. So generally speaking, we try to develop this into a kind of a flow chart for you. You can always reach out to any of these resources, right? But generally speaking, I like to start with the most local resource first, right? Who is on the ground and who can support you immediately in some of these situations versus, what are some other resources that are still good, but a little bit more removed from that immediacy, right? So if you need assistance, like there's a fire, you need the police, you need an ambulance, call that 911 equivalent in your host country. If you have questions about the 911 equivalent, again, there's the State Department resource that is available in this other resource I will plug in the next slide. But you can also just Google U.S. State Department 911 equivalents abroad, and that will bring that up. But I would recommend, if you need, similar to in the United States, if you need the fire, if you need the police, if you need an ambulance service, call that 911 equivalent. They are the ones that are going to be there quickly to help you in that situation. For the less immediate types of assistance, that's where I would reach out to your program leader or in-country program contact. A lot of your programs, we have worked with program providers to provide 24/7 health and safety support on your specific program. That will be something that will be talked about in your in-country orientation session about, like, hey, what do you do after hours? Who do you contact? That's what we're talking about here. And that's where you want to make sure you understand who that person is and how to reach them. And that's all of these numbers in general. You want to take the time as I'm talking right now to program some of these numbers into your phone so that you are not scrambling in that emergency situation saying, I don't know what Crisis 24 number is, right? If you have the app, that's going to be easy because you can pull it up and you can use the button to request assistance, right? But if you already have these numbers already saved in your phone, it's going to save you a lot of time and stress in those types of situations. Again, next, I would move to Crisis 24. Crisis 24 is great, a really great resource. They operate all around the world, and they can, like I said, connect you to medical services, and they vetted medical services, make sure you're getting the care that you need, right? But they are operating all around the world. So it's maybe taking a little bit more time to say like, oh, here's where you should connect. Here's where you should go. So that's where it's a little bit more removed than like a 911 equivalent or that in-country program contact. Finally, we do have a 24/7 emergency hotline here in the Programs Abroad, which is the number provided here. You can always reach out to us and we can help you navigate a situation, right? But often we're going to be checking in with the program leader, or we're going to be checking in with Crisis 24, or we're going to be checking in with a 911 equivalent, or telling you call 911, right? So again, we're here to help figure out situations and are available, but I would recommend some of these other resources depending on the circumstance you find yourself in. Like I said, you want to make sure you save these numbers before you travel. We will be sending you that insurance information, insurance packet, including a brochure. I recommend reading through it and saving that so you can access it and reference it. Again, if you use Crisis 24 when you need medical assistance, they can do a lot of that on the back end, which is great. So please do take advantage of them. And then we do have our 24/7 number. As I mentioned earlier, you want to enroll in the State Department, U.S. State Department's Smart Traveler Enrollment Program, or STEP. That's how you can make sure you're receiving important information from the embassy, the U.S. Embassy or consulate, and helps them connect with you in an emergency situation or get you information in those situations, or even help your family contact you in those types of situations. So a great resource. Please do, again, take the time to program these into your phone before you travel. Finally, last two slides, I do want you to think about, some of the homework that you can give yourself now. Some of you might be really familiar with the host country language. Some of you maybe have never really spoken. And one of the reasons you're excited to go abroad is because you'll be doing some language immersion, right? And learning more about this language. So we gave you some examples here of some phrases that you could start thinking about now, right? Take a screenshot of this. How do you say this? How do you say I'm lost, or I need food, or fire in your host country language, right? Because not everybody is going to speak English in these locations. And so it's worth doing that homework now, again, when you're not in an emergency situation, so that you can help yourself navigate that situation if it does come up, right? Think about what is that local 911 equivalent or local police number. What is like the closest hospital to your residence once you know where you're staying? Things that you can do now. And then finally, like I said, I know this is a lot of information. We do have a Study Abroad 101 guide that has a whole section on health and safety abroad. As you can see here, this is a screenshot of the table of content. So we have health abroad, safety abroad, emergencies abroad. So please do use your phone to use this QR code to download this, right? Or you save a copy that I would print it out, right? Read through it. Again, this is great plain reading, or save a copy so that you can access it. But please do read it before you travel abroad, because again, the best thing that's going to help you in these situations is being prepared for them and knowing what your game plan is. So please do refer to that and let us know if you have any questions as you read through it. With that, I am going to hand the presentation back to Jess.
Hi, thank you, Sean. So we just spent a lot of time thinking about safety. So now we're going to spend a little bit of time asking ourselves the question, am I uncomfortable in a situation because it's unsafe? Or am I just uncomfortable in a situation because it's different? So I'd like you to take a look at the iceberg here. This is the iceberg of culture. And that top little bit is the tip of the iceberg. That is what we see and what we think of when we think of culture. It is going to be our observable practices. It's going to be what someone's wearing, what they're saying, and what we see. So it's going to be the food, the architecture, signs and symbols, festivals and rituals, and maybe the language and communication that is used. But below the surface, under the water, is those important pieces of culture that really build identity. So it's going to be core beliefs, it's going to be cultural attitudes, and it's going to be the perception of someone else's behavior. So what I hope that you take away from this section is a lot of our culture is outside of our conscious awareness, and the things that we cannot see will shape what someone is doing and what we are doing. So let's have some fun with it. Okay, so you're going to see these symbols. If you see the little question mark, that's a rhetorical question. So I'm asking you simply to think, maybe to ask yourself a question. If you see the little computer, you are going to take a poll. You've had some practice with that so far in the presentation. And then if you see the light bulb, we are hoping that you make meaning or find resolution in the topic we're discussing. So I'm going to read the scenario to you, and I want you to then answer the poll. So a group is eating dinner at the dinner table with a guest. The guest picks up their drink and finishes it, then helps themselves to another. One of the group members looks at the guest with a blank stare. The guest says, "Shrimp, my favorite," and helps himself to a serving while everyone is watching. One of the members looks at the other and says, "Oh, they have a good appetite." Another one looks side to side. The guest drops a piece of shrimp on their shirt, and at one point they pick up a piece of food with their fingers. Later, a member comes out with another dish and says, "This dish is not salty enough. No flavor, it's too bad to eat." They smile as they hand the dish to the guest. The guest smiles and takes a bite of the dish. After a few seconds of chewing, the guest says, "You know, all this needs is a little bit of this," and picks up a condiment and pours it onto the dish. The table is silent. So what I would like you to do is go ahead and answer the following questions. How comfortable did you perceive the guest to be in this scenario? How comfortable did you perceive the group to be? The group's comment on the guest's appearance was what? The silence at the table indicated what? How acceptable is it for people to express their opinions about a meal? And how acceptable is this serving size? Okay, about 30% of you have answered. I'm waiting for more answers. And I'm still missing a few hundred of you, but we'll keep going. So the guest generally did not seem super comfortable. The group maybe a little bit more. You guys kind of were in the middle with the comment on the guest appetite. Maybe that wasn't okay, but you're not super sure. The silence at the table indicated. How acceptable is it for people to express their opinion? Kind of in the middle, right? Maybe it's okay, maybe it's not. And then the serving size. All right. So let's watch this in action and see if this changes your opinion.
A few things I forgot to mention.
Let me make a toast.
You shouldn't have had that second glass when everyone else had had only half an inch just for taste.
Shrimp. My favorite.
You should have taken only a small spoonful of the best dish until everyone had had a helping.
He has good appetite.
He shouldn't have bragged he was a fast learner. But the worst was when Rich criticized my mother's cooking, and he didn't even know what he had done. As is the Chinese cook's custom, my mother always insults her own cooking, but only with the dishes she serves with special pride.
This dish not salty enough. No flavor. It's too bad to eat. But please.
Oh.
That was our cue to eat some and proclaim it the best she'd ever made.
You know, Linda, all this needs is a little soy sauce. Oh, oh, oh.
All right. So I'm curious, after you watched the scenario play out, why do you think you answered the way you did in the polls? What about your own culture was projected in your answers? What assumptions might you have made subconsciously to arrive at your answer? And then what cultural values might have shaped the way that you've interpreted the cases so far? So both this case and then the case that we shared earlier about the drinking at lunch. Okay, so case number 2 in this section. So we are going to be talking about air conditioning, but I want to name that we are traveling. Many of you are traveling in the winter. You're maybe traveling in January, or you may be going abroad in February. And so this scenario also will pertain to heat. It's important to know that much of the world is very environmentally conscious. So, while we are talking about air conditioning, this does pertain to heat as well. I do see that there is a student with their hand raised in the webinar. I'd like to remind you that we do have the Q&A available for you to ask questions. So please ask the question that you have in the Q&A. I'm going to go ahead and X out those raised hands. Okay. So Josh studies abroad in Florence and lives with the host family. His host mom is very kind and attentive and makes sure that he's comfortable. As the spring semester progresses, the temperatures in the country start to fluctuate. At one point, the temperature reaches 80 degrees. Josh felt very uncomfortable in his host family's apartment, as it felt as hot inside as it was outside. So I want you to think, who is involved and where are they from? Who are the characters? So what would you do if you were Josh? What would you normally do in this scenario? Would you open a window? Would you turn on the AC? Would you use a fan? Would you grab an ice pack? Would you change your clothes, maybe add some extra deodorant, or would you take multiple showers? Okay, so the majority of you said you'd use a fan, some said turn on the AC, and many of you said open a window. Let's see what Josh does. Okay, so the host mom sees that Josh is not comfortable and then opens the windows to allow ventilation. But at night, Josh is still uncomfortable. So now we have two characters. We have Josh and then we have his host mom. So I want you to think, for Josh, is this a cultural difference, a safety concern, or both? Is this a cultural difference, a safety concern, or both? Okay, so the majority of you did say cultural difference, and we also had about 27% of you say both. See what happens next. Okay, so Josh then notices that there's a temperature controller in his host family's wall. Oh my goodness, so great. He didn't think anything of it, and he lowered the temperature to a nice, comfy 68 degrees. But the following day, his host mom was very upset. So I want you to just think about it. This is a rhetorical question, meaning I'm not actually asking you to answer to me. You don't have to raise your hand, just think about it. What do you think upset the host mom about Josh's decision to lower the temperature? Well, there might be a few different things at play here, right? So, Europeans, where Josh, he's in Europe, they often prefer and are adapted to natural ventilation. So when she opened the window, that was very typical to how she would handle the situation for herself. They are highly energy and environmentally conscious, especially due to the cost of energy prices. And they also have a negative perception of air conditioning and their own health concerns. However, I think many of you that said both, you are on to something, okay? Josh's body is not used to warmer temperatures. He may have a health condition that means he cannot self-regulate heat. And if he's losing sleep for a prolonged period, that could be a safety concern and it would lower his productivity. So it's always important to kind of measure the uncomfortable temperature versus health risks. And most importantly, to communicate, right? In this scenario, nobody talked to each other. The host mom saw that Josh was uncomfortable, but they didn't have a conversation, right? Josh saw the temperature controller, but he didn't say anything to the host mom. So I really invite you to open communication with your host families and with those around you. Talk to each other, communicate in any way you can to make sure that you find that happy medium. This also does pertain to heat. So a few takeaways, please stay curious, stay open-minded, ask questions, stay ready to learn. You are immersing yourself in a new culture and you are going to go below the water, right? Think of the iceberg, you're going below the tip of the iceberg. And that may make you a little bit uncomfortable. So ask yourself, am I uncomfortable because it's unsafe or am I just uncomfortable because it's different? Listen to your gut. If your gut is saying this is unsafe, trust yourself, but really pause, okay? Really pause, and then make sure you're building that support network with your peers, with your on-site team, and locals to immerse yourself in a new culture. We don't see things as they are, we see things as we are. So thank you for engaging with me. I'm going to pass the mic to wrap up with Sam. Okay, perfect. The reentry period is the transition from being abroad to returning to your normal environment. You may experience things like reverse culture shock, a shift in self-identity, difficulty sharing your experience, missing your host country, and new academic and career questions. Please know it is perfectly normal to experience these emotions and challenges as you reenter the US. Some ways to help cope with reentry are staying connected with the new friends that you've made abroad, getting involved on campus, such as the International House, known as the iHouse, or swing by the Programs Abroad office. You could also reflect upon your experience by journaling or scrapbooking, and take some time to update your resume or your LinkedIn reflecting this new experience that you have. We'd love to give a special shout out to the Judith Anderson Herbert Writing Center. They're offering online writing consultations for you while you're abroad. They will have 10 hours a week of appointments available to you during January with flexible options that could fit the time zone. So if you need any writing help, they will be there. One really cool thing that they're doing to support students who are studying abroad is reflection upon reentry. They are helping translate the global experiences that you will have received onto your resume, preparing for interviews, and also drafting professional writing in person or online. Should you choose to go in person, they are located in the Hodges Library. And if you'd like to learn more or book an appointment, we'll pause here just for a moment so that you can take a picture of this link here on the right-hand side. All right, with that being said, I'm going to hand it back over to Kirsten, who is going to talk to us about the Center for Career Development.
All right, everybody, thank you so much for your attention throughout all of this. Let me just see if I can switch slides here. Oh, went too fast. Sorry, guys. All right, so I'm going to introduce this video, and I'm afraid it's going to start on me, so I'm going to leave it here on this slide until I move over there. But what I want you to think about is that studying abroad isn't just an amazing adventure, because it is. It's also a powerful boost for your career. In fact, 97% of students who studied abroad secured a job within 1 year of graduation. This is from a study that was done nationwide. That's compared to just 49% of their peers. So this is a pretty big deal for you. Also, on average, study abroad alumni start with salaries about 25% higher than those who go abroad. But here's the key. It isn't just going abroad that makes the difference. It's what you do there. How intentional you are about intentionally building skills, making connections, and seeking experiences that will shape how much the experience benefits your future. So I'm going to show you a video that's from the Center for Career Development at the University of Tennessee, where they're going to talk about a little bit more detail about how this happens and what employers are looking for specifically. And I want you to think about how you can be strategic on your program abroad so that your time overseas truly boosts your career readiness. Okay, so here we go.
Hi, Balls. My name is Stephanie Kitt, and I'm the director at the Center for Career Development and Academic Exploration. Congratulations on your decision to study abroad. I know it's going to be an amazing experience. I'm here today to tell you briefly about how you can frame this experience in a career lens and think about the skills and experiences and competencies you're going to gain while abroad so that you can really sell the value of this experience to future employers or graduate programs. I want you to think holistically about this experience, everything from getting passports and visas to arranging transportation there, learning a new culture, a new housing situation, the coursework that you'll complete, as well as any additional travel that you'll do. You're going to want to frame those experiences through these 8 NACE career-ready competencies. I'm going to briefly introduce them to you. Critical thinking looks at solving problems and thinking through things critically. We have communication, representing both oral and written communication. Teamwork, learning how to work together with others to solve a task or problem. Technology, using technology effectively to complete your work and learning about emerging technologies. We have career and self-development, so understanding your career goals and what it takes to reach them, as well as knowing about your strengths and interests and values. Leadership, understanding when it's appropriate to step up into a leadership role. Professionalism, your work output, your punctuality, your work integrity. And finally, equity inclusion, learning to work respectfully with people from different cultures. And I bet that you are going to work on all 8 of those throughout your experience. And before you leave, I encourage you to set some goals about what do you want to learn and accomplish. Are there some of those competencies that you particularly want to hone while you're abroad? Collect stories. When you have challenges, maybe you have challenges navigating the transportation system or in learning how to communicate in the grocery store. Think about how you can turn that into an interview story in the future, because we really want you to learn how to articulate this experience both on your resume and in interviews, as well as letting it help build your professional brand on resources like LinkedIn. When you return to Tennessee, you will have a re-entry workshop, and we will go into much more depth with this career lens and help you learn how to write up the experience on your resume. You can always have career coaching appointments. That's even something you can do virtually while abroad. And we're going to help you learn how to talk about the experience in interviews, help you really refine your LinkedIn profile and get you a great looking headshot. If you want to do any of this work while you're away, you can get started at career.utk.edu. But for now, I hope your trip is amazing, and we look forward to working with you when you return. Go Balls.
All right, everyone. So she gave a lot of really great advice there. And I want you to think about what are the things that you heard or what are the things that you think you are going to develop. The goal setting recommendation is probably the one that I would follow. And thinking back on my own study abroad experience, it's definitely something I wish I'd paid a little bit more attention to before I went. So it might be that you think about what am I already good at and what do I still need some help with. There are so many skills that you can develop on study abroad programs, from intercultural communication to adaptability and flexibility to problem solving, as she mentioned. Even things that might be specific to you. This might be your first time traveling overseas on your own. And so the confidence and independence that you build from that, or collaboration and teamwork from working on projects with different host cultures. So think about what you want to grow in on your experience abroad. We're hitting the end. I know some of you are really excited about that. We're hitting the end of our pre-departure orientation today. And so I want you to think about some of the things that we've asked you to do throughout. Your immediate next steps are listed here on this screen. And so completing your pre-departure assessment in the Vols Abroad portal, that is going to be the way that tells us that you are here, that you are paying attention, and that you learned something on this orientation. So please be sure to do that. Make sure that you follow some of the instructions, or in fact, all of the instructions that Sean told you. Download the Crisis 24 app. Enroll in the Safe Traveler Enrollment Program on travel.state.gov. Make sure that you saved the Programs Abroad contact card so that you can reach us in case of emergency. Go back into your Vols Abroad portal. I'd ask you to make sure that everything looks submitted before you go. Also, for students on faculty-directed programs, taking programs for UTK credit, make sure you are enrolled in the appropriate courses. You can talk with your academic advisor about that. If you are going on a program where you are getting transfer credit for your program, make sure you have submitted a request for transfer credit form. We are going to have some bonus material in just a couple minutes. So those of you who are doing transfer credit programs and have questions about that, you can stay on while we release everybody else to learn a little bit more. I don't want to forget to tell you, make sure you connect with us. You can see our social media are linked in here. You do both, right? We want to follow your experiences abroad. And so following us and connecting with us and tagging us while you are abroad is a great way for us to be able to share your experiences with other students, but also think about that career competency piece. If you don't yet have a LinkedIn account, the Career Center is a great place to stop, but we'd love to have you connect with us on LinkedIn as well. So one last reminder to log into the Vols Abroad portal and complete the pre-departure orientation assessment to mark your attendance today. And I just want to thank you again for taking this time to learn and prepare for your experience abroad. So I see a couple of open comments in the Q&A about how do I make sure that I'm not listed as anonymous? Again, how we are checking off that you are here is the pre-departure orientation assessment in your Vols Abroad portal. And so we are going to move on to transfer credit information. So if you are going on a faculty-directed program, you are welcome to sign off now. Thank you again for coming. And if you do want more information about transfer credits and academics, please stay on for just a few more minutes. Jess, am I turning it over to you?
You are. So I'm going to give everyone a chance to exit that wants to exit, and then we're going to talk a little bit about transfer credit programs. If you have any questions relating to anything pertaining to the program, please feel free to drop it in the Q&A, or you can stay on to discuss with the team. Katie, there is a question in the Q&A about posting study abroad pictures on the Instagram and website. If you want to jump in.
Yeah, let me pull up that question because I can't see it at the moment. Let me see here. Okay, yeah. So I actually help out with the Instagram, which is why I just shouted me out. So yeah, we have in the link in the Instagram bio, we have a link to a form on the Programs Abroad website that's called Share Your Vols Abroad Experience form. That is an easy way for you to fill out the form, send us pictures, and just tell us a little bit about your journey. That goes automatically to me and my team. And so that's probably the easiest way. You can also feel free to reach out. Any of the contact information we've shared so far. But you can direct those to me. If you message directly on the Instagram too, I'm the one who's fielding those messages. So that's also fine. But yeah, that's an exciting question. I'm grateful to see that people are interested in sharing their experience. So yeah.
All right, so if you are still on, I am assuming that you want to talk about the request for credit transfer form. So we had many requests for credit transfer form questions in the Q&A. And so before I jump into this, I do want to name that the process does take 8 to 10 weeks. So it will depend on when you started the form as to when the form is complete and has gone through all of the stakeholder signatures. So what you need to do is first ensure that you have a request for credit transfer form in the system. If you are unsure if you did it right, you're going to go to this website here. You're going to log in with your NetID and password. And then you can click on the PDF icon here to see where it is in the current process. So the form is first completed by you, and then it goes to your academic advisor. It may also go to your minor advisor if that is applicable, and then it comes back to you. Then it goes to financial aid, okay? All of this takes time. If you do not see a pending form, you can go under My Forms and Pending Draft Forms to see its status. Okay, so step one, you're going to check the requirements. You're going to make sure all of this is correct. Then you're going to review any advisor comments. They will tell you if specific classes are approved or not, and they will leave detailed comments about the courses. And then we ask that you familiarize yourself with the number of degree applicable hours and complete the financial aid certificate form. So the number of hours that your academic advisor approves are the number of hours that your financial aid associate or the financial aid advisor is going to say are degree applicable. And that is very important because to receive your financial aid package, as mentioned earlier in the presentation, a good rule of thumb is that you need to be enrolled as a full-time student. So for a semester, that is 12 credit hours. For the summer, that is 6 credit hours. There will also be a note about the financial aid certificate form in your request for credit transfer form. You can find that form in your My UTK. So make sure that you're reading the comments in your request for credit transfer form. Okay, if any of the fields do not show, check the signatures to see where your form is. You can look at the PDF and you can see where your form currently is in the process. All of these people have to sign your form, which is why it regularly takes 8 to 10 weeks.